is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev. And for those of you that are new to the podcast, this is the show where we talk to awesome people about awesome things, whether it's what they do or things they just find interesting and awesome. This week's guest is a very important person in my life who is licking a microphone. I think you can I think if you listen back, you can hear it.
I'm a very special person in your life.
He's a very special person in my life and would have originally been the first guest on this podcast had timing and weddings not gotten in the way and preparation for the wedding, really.
Damn it, Rihanna.
Yeah, damn you, ruining my friendship! I just peeked. Anyway, so he is, my best friend in the entire world, and also someone who we work together in a small fashion as far as our outside interest that we want to be our paying gigs is what we do together, from writing to filming to entertainments in general, is like our business. And without further ado, the master of words, the creator of worlds.
I like that one better.
Creator of worlds, Michael DeAngelo. Welcome to Everything is Awesome.
Hi, everybody.
So,
that's the way I introduce myself.
That's the show.
Hi, everybody.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
For those of you that know my podcasting career, you also know Mike then, because he's been on Happy Hour. He's been the co-host of That's Entertainment, the original the unofficial Once Upon a Time podcast. We briefly did Lost in the Past, I believe, is what we called our Lost podcast that we did for 15 minutes at a time. It was I think we did 6 shows. It was like a rewatch of Lost.
Yeah.
So those of you that know my world of podcasting and even our main business model now, which is thatsentertains.com, you guys know Mike too. For those of you that don't know Mike, he, as we said, he is a creator of worlds. The conversation will kind of gear towards that more so than That's Entertainment, towards his writing and Tellest and how he got into all that.
Because it's a busy month.
But also, because we are such good friends, we are going to go on wild tangents for sure.
As we were ought to do.
Which, if you've been listening thus far, this is going to likely be episode 5 and 6. If we go 2 hours, we'll be 2-parters. And much like Everything is Awesome in general, it just goes on wild tangents. This will be no different, but probably even more so.
It'll be worse.
And I have pure gold. And you know how it's pure gold? Because the folder says so.
It does. I don't think. I mean, the gold kind of looks orange, yeah. Maybe not pure.
It's an orange folder, but
maybe faux gold.
And tangent. How they sell diamonds in different clarities and stuff.
Sure.
So I just saw a commercial, I think, for the chocolate diamond.
Oh yeah, they've been around for a little bit.
So, but in my mind, are they just? This is what my thought process. Are they just selling really dirty, unclear diamonds at a high price and calling it chocolate?
I don't believe so. I think they're trying to sell it to ethnic groups.
Oh.
That's personally what I think about it. And I don't mean that to be racist, which kind of makes it racist.
But to me, I'm just looking at it, I'm like, that doesn't look nice. That looks like a dirty diamond.
Yeah. I mean, you get a diamond, in my mind, and I don't think any of the colored diamonds are especially attractive. I think you get a diamond because it's got that kind of
clear shine.
Yeah, it's got a cleanliness to it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just because it's a brown diamond. I think if it's brown, if it's yellow, if it's red
blood diamonds.
Yeah. It can be a green diamond, it can be a blue diamond. None of them look good.
And it's amazing.
We're not going to get any sponsors from diamond companies, just so you know.
It's amazing the difference between $1,000 1 carat ring and a $2,000. You see that clarity difference.
Yeah.
It's weird. Not weird. It's just interesting. We'll say awesome, if you will. Anyway, so. Let's before we go on to more tangents, let's kind of start from the beginning. Obviously, I would, aside from IT guy, I would call you a writer first and foremost.
Probably.
At one point, it may have been actor, which we can get into later. At one point, it may have been wrestler. But definitely by in our 30s, I think you finally have formed the identity of writer.
I might not be a good writer.
I think you're an excellent writer.
Well, I appreciate that.
Though I tend to only fully read the short stories.
It's a big commitment when you read my
but,
stuff.
And it's not like it's mainly because I know the story. So I don't know all the details because I don't read the book. I own all 3 paperbacks, and I don't necessarily know all the intricate details that I actually need to go and read.
Sorry, I don't really know them either. That's the nice thing about having the stories on my computer. I can just do a Control F and find all that stuff.
But I do I know the world so well because I've been a part of it from almost the beginning of Tellest, that is. But
you might have like a 3-month delay.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I remember the formation of Tellest. But let's go before we get to that. Let's just go a little bit further back and when did, or maybe Tellest was the point. When did writing become a thing for you? I enjoy writing stories, or I enjoy writing in general.
So all right. So what happened was, and I found these things when I moved into the house that I'm living in now. I inherited it from my dad after he passed away, and we had a bunch of stuff from first, second, and third grade. And apparently, I really liked that stuff back then. I'm gonna talk into the microphone.
Yeah.
Apparently, I really liked that stuff even way back then. I had stories where I would write from a shark's point of view and stuff like that.
Okay.
I didn't realize that I liked writing back then. It wasn't probably until 17 when I started writing a character for a video game, Baldur's Gate.
You were 17 then? That's how old you were?
I was 17 when I started writing it.
I feel like it was earlier.
Yeah,
almost.
I mean, I always came up with stories and stuff, but I never stuck with it. Games were always the first thing that came to my mind. So I would make
games are your entry point into the world of storytelling.
Yeah. So I mean, I was making little maps and stuff for make-believe games that never went anywhere. So it was all these projects that I had never really had any substance to them.
And I kind of remember, speaking of making maps, and I don't think this was with the D&D club that failed in Village Park or Charles Bain.
It was Charles Bain.
I think this was just something else, and I don't even know if it was you and I, but it was graph paper that we literally made maps on, rooms and stuff. And I don't know if that was necessarily for D&D because I don't remember ever playing D&D but 2 times in my life.
We made when we were doing the stuff with the graph paper, that was a very light version of D&D.
And wasn't that to move, we would hold the pencil with our finger
that was a different
and flick
game.
it?
That was a different game. That was a Star Wars-esque game where you had a planet on each side of the paper.
Okay.
And you had 3 TIE fighter looking things, and you would move them by putting your finger on the top of a pencil and basically pushing down on it. But you couldn't. It wasn't you were drawing. It was you were just letting gravity kind of take its. And then we played it where if you shot the other person's the wing off of the TIE fighter, it couldn't fly that way anymore, but you had to hit it dead center to actually blow it up.
Okay. Yeah, we played a lot of dopey games.
Yes, but I maintain that if we found a way to make it work on an iPad, we'd make millions.
Oh yeah, well I mean simplicity is what sells on iOS and Android and mobile games. So back to the writing.
So 17. When I was writing for just a profile. You know what it was? I was waiting. I knew that in Baldur's Gate 2, you could write a profile for your character
and have custom pictures and even custom voices. No,
you could do custom pictures and voices. I actually had that in the first Baldur's Gate for all of us. I got our MySpace pictures or something.
Yeah.
And I knew that the second one was coming out, and I knew that you could do a profile and everything. So I started writing a character profile for the guy, and it ended up being 2 pages, and it was right after a math test, and our classes were 90 minutes long, and I took my math tests in 15 minutes. I'm not one of those people who goes back and checks my work.
Yeah.
I just go with instinct. If my first answer is the one that I picked, that's the one that I go for. So for 70 minutes per class during those times, I was just sitting around doing nothing, so I started writing. And 2 pages became 70 pages became 365, and then after 15 years, that one book kind of transformed into 8 books, and I'm on the 9th, 10th, and 11th right now.
So that original story,
That's the one that we don't speak of.
That's the one that one day we're doing a parody podcast play of.
Do you still have that?
Oh, it's on my desk at work.
The original one, Crossroads.
The original Crossroads.
That I look back at Bindings of Fate, and I'm a little sketchy on that. I can only imagine how bad Crossroads is.
Bindings of Fate, the only thing I can even remember is I remember reading the first draft or maybe the second draft. Like I didn't read the paperback or e-form. It was like a printed out version you gave me. I remember the first couple chapters.
Well, you remember the most famous line, right?
Is it "You're a dick"?
No. No. I think I took that out. That's probably
that was in Crossroads. Yeah.
No, the most famous line in Bindings of Fate is "Stop the carriage, I know that wolf."
Oh yeah.
That is going to go on shirts.
Yes,
I think it has to. I've been told that even if like I make like a second edition of Bindings of Fate, like with like it cleaned up a little bit because my writing has evolved in 15 years.
Obviously,
I'm not allowed to take that line out.
No, I do like that line now that you say it. And the only thing I remember about the as is novel of Bindings of Fate is that the reading it in the printed out version, it took me a while to, because that's like probably the only book I've read fully 100%, but not in final format, in whatever format it was like originally. I remember it taking me a couple days to get through the first couple chapters, and then eventually it hits a beat that just keeps rolling.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that I need to edit for, because it really should kind of hook you right off the bat. And I think part of the issue is there's so much time in that story where Chaos is just on his own. And I've learned from that. Like, this month is the NaNoWriMo. It's National Novel Writing Month.
Which you are crushing, and I have been. I blame partial sickness and writing a comic for having 0 words.
Well,
right now.
Here's what I look at. We talked about this beforehand, and we said that you were going to do
like a mini one.
Yeah, and I think if you're counting the writing that you've done for the comic, you're probably on a roll.
Yeah, well,
there's people who do comics for NaNoWriMo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like they'll write out like a graphic novel or something.
Yeah, that's
like
cool.
That.
It's interesting seeing different ways. I was reading. I have the Dark Knight Returns in my book bag, and I just was flipping through it today, just to like, because I questioned myself a lot writing the comic. Like, am I doing the panels right? Like, is there enough panels? Or like, I don't think there's really a set way to do it necessarily. Like, it's just your writer's intuition.
Yeah, there's certain things, like when I was doing research, that it's like, it's very apparent. Like if it's like a dream sequence, it's in white, I guess, these days.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't make any of those notes.
Yeah.
In fact, mine, and you'll see it when you read it, is like very more dialogue heavy and little direction, because for me, like, the artist is the director.
Yeah.
In this case,
our artist in question, if he agrees, he would be able to make fucking, gold out of straw. So
there was like anything that I thought was important that I wanted a specific way is what I described. Other than that, like, I kind of leave it up to the artist's discretion. But like, so I questioned myself a lot. So I was flipping through the Dark Knight Returns and like seeing, I was like, wow, there's a lot of panels on each page here, and that's just Frank Miller's way.
Yeah.
And then like looking at the end of the book that they have a sample of his script for the 4th book in the series, and it's weird seeing, because they basically wrote like maybe 3 pages per act of just description, and it said like Act 1 takes place between pages 1 and 12.
Yeah, you do that a little bit.
And
I can see.
Like that to me is just a weird, like, I don't know, that's either a Frank Miller way, or maybe that's the way you did it in the 80s. What I researched was not necessarily the Marvel way, because I couldn't find the Marvel way online, but I found I think it was either IDW or Dynamite had like an example of how to write a comic book script, and that's kind of what I went off of. So and I did my own flavor to it. It's very like loose writing as far as like, maybe there's some bars here, or maybe there's not. It's very like me talking to the artist in the description, and then just writing. Yeah, and then writing the dialogue, which to me and that's like. My writing is very dialogue heavy. I'm more of like the Kevin Smith school of writing, where I like dialogue, not action.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to
so NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
I'll keep us on track. Well, no. Yeah. We'll leave the track, and I'll find the flashlight that leads us back. So NaNoWriMo is like a challenge for writers to basically try and write 50,000 words or more in 1 month. It's basically, a lot of people, they'll say that they want to write a book and they never really get around to it. Writing was the first thing that like I ever really completed, like anything. Like I said, all those video game projects and stuff like that, they were just kind of like flights of fancy that I really wasn't prepared to finish. Like I didn't have the know-how, first off. I didn't have the programs, the necessary expertise. But the nice thing about writing is, as long as you have a pencil and a piece of paper, you can write. So it's just committing to the idea of actually reaching the end.
And that kind of goes in line with like Kevin Smith is a big proponent of like grab a microphone, grab your phone, and just record, tell a story, because that's your voice is what you have, and it's unique. And I actually, if you go to thatentertains.com, it's still like near the top because I haven't done much for the site lately. But there's I did a post about the National Writing Month.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I talk about how I implore everyone to do it because it's just like podcasting, or just like everyone has a story to tell. I don't care who you are.
Absolutely.
And it is something that like I wouldn't call it dying art, but I mean, it kind of is, with novels going the way of ebook and stuff. And it kind of, for me, looking at an ebook, it kind of almost like it dumbs it down.
I guess you can look at it
in
that
a way.
But
not all ebooks.
Yeah.
But because I prefer not like, for instance, that's where you make your money is in the ebook world because you're a self-publisher.
Well, I wouldn't say I make money.
But like over your print books.
But you know what? And here's an interesting way to look at things.
I'm also old school. I like to hold something.
Well, 25 years ago, the only way that you could write was on a piece of paper with a pencil. Maybe you were lucky enough to have a typewriter or a word processor. Now, like most of the people who are writing, they're writing everything on a computer. That was, like people probably felt the same way that you feel about ebooks and everything 25 years ago about writing books. Like, what a bastard writing on a typewriter. What are you, dictating a letter to your mother from the Army? Come on. Happy Veterans Day, everybody.
Belated.
That was yesterday.
And also last month.
Yeah, it'll be like last month. Yeah.
Or 2 months ago.
So NaNoWriMo is like the whole concept of it for me was just absolutely petrifying, because the most that I've written of like the last 5 stories, I don't even think cracked 50,000. The Fall was the biggest story that I wrote in the last 2 years, and it took me probably a year and a half to write it.
You started it when I was still at Woods.
Yeah, I mean,
that was almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, I started all 5 stories right around the same time, just so that I could get sample chapters out to people and kind of find like a flavor for each of the stories. But at the end, The Fall was a huge journey for me, because it was one of the more important events of the entire series. So I wanted to make sure that I took the time to tell it right. And I do kind of have that old school way of writing. I write in a notebook before I transfer to a computer. With NaNoWriMo, I knew that I couldn't do that. I couldn't self-edit myself or anything like that. So everything that you see on the page that like I mean, you have access to the page, the stuff,
which is I'm going to start reading next week.
So everything that I write on that is completely done on the computer. It's like the first time that I've ever done a full story on the computer, like as is. The other benefit that I have, I'm typically not too much of a plotter. I'm a pantser. I kind of write just from the seat of my pants. But with this story in particular, Heart of the Forest, I already had like 4 years worth of notes written on it, because it's basically the novelization of a game, the first game that we were planning on making. And it was supposed to be that I was going to write the novelization after the game was put together, but the story itself has kind of taken on a life all its own.
And I'm excited for this one, obviously, because it's Steel Tip. And this is like the one where I think we said I'm going to kind of co-author by just was it this one or something else? Because it was originally the Alliance trilogy that we were going to do, and then I said, let's sample whatever story you're working on.
Yeah, something like that.
So this is the one where now, because you turned it into like this, you're doing it for the writing month. It's going to be one that I just give a lot of notes on.
Yeah.
And maybe not co-author, but just.
And I don't even know how many notes you're going to be able to give on it, because it's going to be like, oh, that happened. okay, that happened.
Yeah, I mean, generally when I read your stuff, I mean, if it has something to do with like Steel Tip or the Ippia side of things, that's where I have the most interest because like I like to help shape that area, that little area of
which
Tellest.
Means you should pay attention to the fall.
Yeah, well, and I haven't read it yet. Yeah, but you know what? It's one of those things where even though he's a very important character, even in Steel Tip's life. It doesn't. You could. I mean, aside from killing him off, there's really not much that you can do to affect the story that I already have planned for him.
With Icarus,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, with Steel Tip's story in Heart of the Forest, it's kind of the problem is he kind of starts off in the very similar kind of mentality that he has in the Bindings of Fate. Like, it doesn't look like I dumbed him down enough for him to. Mm-hmm. You know, he at this point, I imagine he's 17, 18, something like that.
Yeah, he's under 20.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I really got that across because, you know, he's not as brash as maybe I should have written him.
I'd venture to actually say he's probably 18-ish because I know the story that I'm supposed to be working on for the writing month is his first year as like kind of taking up a hero role.
Yeah,
and he does that as a teenager, as a 15-year-old, and he makes plenty of mistakes between 15 and 18. And I venture to say that he, you know, the story that comes after that, the King's Blood trilogy, which, speaking of Tellest history and Crossroads, is a train wreck of an original novel.
Oh yeah,
I mean that he at one point jumped over a 60-foot wall.
I think it was 40. We'll go with 40. We'll dial it back just a bit. Make it a little bit more realistic.
And
that was when I realized that Steel Tip was actually the Green Ranger.
And that's like that story I'm excited to get into because it is taking a 300-page novel, maybe 400-page novel that I originally wrote and expanding it into 3 novels.
Yeah,
but that all
you'll
takes
find
place.
It easy though because you've learned so much as a person. First off,
exactly.
And then I mean, even though you haven't done that much fiction over those 15 years or whatever, you've definitely written enough to find a more powerful voice.
And I consider I consider myself more of a storyteller than writer.
That's the same way I find myself too.
So like all my notes on any of the stories I have, like even if it's an outline form, like it tells the story, I just need to flesh it out. So my story is written. I just need to, you know, put in the meat and potatoes and some of the fluff.
Yep.
It will be interesting. I can't wait to get into that. Yeah. I don't know. I was going on some other tangent. That the King's Blood trilogy, he's 18. So I'd imagine by the time Heart of the Forest is probably just a couple weeks after that. Yeah. So he's still probably 18 at best.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil too much about it. But I will say that it definitely has like opened my eyes to things that I didn't think were going to be in the game that like just kind of showed up and made sense. I usually hate what I write. Like while I'm writing it, I hate it. Like I despise myself. Self-loathing is a very powerful motivator.
Well, and that's also, I think, one of the most important tools as a creative person is being able to sit down and say that was garbage. Because right around the time when, you know, kind of going back into the past a little bit, when you started writing I guess maybe the world Tellest or this character bio that kind of I think that's what morphed into Tellest. Was at that time we were already wrestling, and that was my thing. That was my creative. Like I said I was going to write, and I did. I mean, I did write a novel at one point in my life. It's dog shit, and it was never published. But I also was more into wrestling at the time, and that was my creative outlet, and that's where I mean there was writing going on with that and stuff. And I am and will always be, whenever I watch any of my matches. Well, now, in hindsight now, as a 31-year-old, I can watch some of those matches and say that they were good and kind of congratulate myself. But every single match I had, whether it was bad or good, I would sit there and say that was the worst match of my life.
Yeah, as soon as I'm done writing a sentence, I hate myself for it. And it's like I want to absolve myself of my sin. Like Silas the albino from You Are Filthy and Unclean. But then, you know, I give myself like the 2-month wait or whatever and look back at it, and I'm actually not too disappointed with it after that. I do realize that things need to improve, and I think that for the most part, after 15 years, I'm constantly improving.
Well, you're not a good writer if at some point you just are the status quo. Like in 20 years, your writing should still be improving.
Yes. Yeah. I think at the end of my life, unless I start, devolving into, some kind of catatonic state, things should continue to do better and better. But yeah, I mean, I can still see it. Like I can see like comparing, I mean, the original comparison was Bindings of Fate to Crossroads, and it was just like laughable how bad.
It is laughable, the old writing, but that's when, I mean, Bindings of Fate you have published. Were you at Woods yet when it was published, or no?
It was before.
So,
I published 2 books. No, it was 1 book before.
I know As Darkness Falls was at Woods
Yeah.
because I remember helping with the cover on that. But Bindings of Fate. So you were still like in your like mid to late 20s.
I would say 20. We'll say it was 5 years ago, so I was 27.
Yeah. So that is 10 to maybe just under 10 years after you published Crossroads. I mean, you published Crossroads as a teenager, I think. I don't think you hit 20 yet.
I definitely... It was before 20 because I published it before we were out of high school.
Yeah, so that's
some
like...
teacher somewhere has like the original copy.
Yeah,
I want to like find her,
like
steal
the printed copy, or like you wrote it, printed it, and like manuscript form. Oh wow!
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm jealous of you because your stuff didn't ever get published.
No, I mean, money was paid out for it, which was such an asinine way to do publishing. As we were idiot teenagers.
Well, that company still exists.
Really?
Yeah, and they still like they bait the crap out of people. Like I've seen other people, like some of the people who I couldn't possibly remember their names anyway, but some of the people who we've done promos for, I've seen the emblem of the publishing house.
I think they've
it
changed
was First
their name,
Books, now it's Author House.
Okay.
And every time I see it, like I just like my soul does a facepalm.
It's amazing that method still works today because we live in the world of literally self-publishing.
Yeah, like it doesn't really stick in my head where someone says, I'm going to spend $700 to get a shitty cover made, and like an editor who just makes sure that like spell check went through 3 times without, because the editors for Author House and stuff like that, they don't care.
No, yeah, they didn't edit the story. They just checked grammar and punctuation.
Yeah,
if that.
I mean, it's nice to know that some jerk off can make money off of people like that. And I mean, you and me both, fell victim to that mythology. But I would not recommend that to anyone in a world where Amazon exists.
Yeah, because even if you can get away spending at most a couple $100 for your cover, and you can, I mean, it may not be the greatest story at that point, but you can self-edit. You don't have to pay. Like I know you have a professional editor, and you don't cheap out when you pay. As far as your editing is concerned,
or the covers. Yeah, I mean, I spend a decent amount, especially considering there's so little payoff.
But you know what? I think, and the way I look at, the way you have to look at like writing or even podcasting or I'm more so like I want to write a movie. Like that's my thing. And I just need to like get over whatever is holding me back from doing it. But like you need to do it in the mindset of you're not going to make money. Like this is just for
it's never been about money. If it was, I would have quit a long
it's just about sharing your story. And even you have that small audience that you want to grow and you want to find ways to grow it. But like even if it's always going to be that small group of 100 people or 200 people or whatever it is, like that's a cool, nice little family.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? It's like a passive income anyway. It's like a nice surprise at the end of every month when like 30 extra bucks rolls in. And I do see the people who it's affected. Like there's people who leave reviews and everything, and they make you feel really good at the end of the day. There's people who leave really, really nasty reviews.
Why didn't he go to the bathroom, guy?
Yeah.
That was one of the reviews that I remember reading saying, come on, what book have you read?
I love that review. That review originally when I read it actually like really hurt my feelings and made me sad and everything. And I think that there's 2 ways that you can come back from that. Two ways that you can respond to that. 1, you don't come back and it's just like, wow, people are mean. And 2 is you just laugh at them because the idea that someone found objection with characters in my book not being shown, not like it's explicitly stated. Like, I never said, by the way, these guys never went to the bathroom. It was just, all right, well, I've never seen Chaos Cregan pee, so he has a wiener that does not produce urine. So
that is such a weird critique.
I think I'm going to take that under advisement, and that's going to be someone's magic power. I don't have to pee. I teleport the urine directly out of my body, sometimes into other people's mouths.
I would advise against.
I'm sure that somebody somewhere has a golden shower fantasy where they don't have to pee.
I would definitely not put that in Tellest Legends.
It will not be canon. All right? It'll be fan fiction that I'll write under the pseudonym Penelope Honeywagon.
There you go. I like it. So, so the bio for Baldur's Gate 2 leads into the world of Tellest, starting with Crossroads, which was Valley of the Mist part of Crossroads?
Yes, Valley of the Mist now is going to evolve into its own story. I think it's kind of like I'm going to make a novella out of it. I think the same way that like Mageborn and everything was kind of like a precursor to seeing what Adelia was. That's going to be like Chaos's intro story. And then those stories all kind of evolved into the ones that we have now with the cool snazzy covers and everything.
Yeah. And does Leo do all the covers?
Leo has done every cover except for the cover for Becoming a Man, Nace Flaws.
Oh, yeah.
And that's never been released in paperback. The story itself is going to be first released in paperback, hopefully next month, with the Tales of Tellest Volume 1. And then people will probably have to wait like a year or two before Heart of the Forest is actually like available to really get down to like the meat and potatoes where it's been edited properly. If you go onto Patreon and I think you pledge more than $3 a month or $3 a month or more, you get access to all of the chapters, but in their unedited form. So, but I don't really think they're that bad.
No, I mean, and I haven't read it yet, but like reading the short story, can we name drop it now?
Heart of the Forest?
No. The one that deals with the comic.
Oh, Keeper of the Void?
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So Keeper of the Void is, I imagine, an unedited short story.
Yeah, Nace is actually editing it like currently.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like reading that because you sent it to me back in September.
I think it's probably been edited by me since then.
So like it's good. Like I liked everything about it. Like I think you're at a place now where like even in your raw form, it may be a little bloaty. The one thing that I always have in just a mental comment in my head is like you use word, like you're very wordy, like you like to use.
I'm verbose.
You like to use like bigger words and stuff, which is fine. Like there's a place for that. I'm not that guy. When I write, I'm not that guy. I like to write in a specific. Every author is different.
There's some kind of like forced eloquence when I talk. In fact, even when I talk. I think it's because like one informs the other.
I would say I don't notice it in your actual, like right now I don't notice it.
Yeah.
And or when we're having.
But how
an actual
many other
conversation.
people are like eloquence? That's freaking
true. Yeah.
You know.
But see,
it's happened in reality between us so much that you don't pick up on it.
I only pick up on it when I'm reading it and I see where they're like, now I gotta go fucking look up at this word in a dictionary because I'm English dumb.
I still remember Granite versus Granted. That's my favorite. Like that's the story that I tell to everybody. Like, man, Kev's come a long way.
That was circa like the days of Crossroads and Kingsblood, the book. So yeah, your writing in this rawest form is I think good now. Like
and I think that's why this year was like a good year to kind of start NaNoWriMo because I'm doing everything on the computer. There is no inner editor that's coming out and saying like, all right, I'll just pick that up. I'll go back. I'll erase. It's just I very rarely will erase anything on this. And it's gone from 2 pages written a day to maybe sometimes 5 or 6.
So do you think in the future you're going to go this route?
So here's what I'm planning on doing. Excuse me. I don't want to say that Heart of the Forest is a story that's not nearer or dearer to my heart than the ones that I've previously written. But because I knew that it was based on a game, it wasn't as... I didn't feel like I needed to bring the same passion that I had. Now, here's the problem. Since writing this, it's become such an interesting journey that I'm becoming very protective of it and everything. So I don't really think that I can ever take a look at something like that and say, I don't care about this as much as this. It's just I have to convince myself to let go a little bit with this type of writing. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to compartmentalize the way I write. I think I'm going to try and make sure that at least one chapter a week gets done like this. And then once that chapter is met, I'm going to put the computer away or typing on the computer away and then bring out the notebooks again because I'm going to tell 2 stories at a time in the notebooks. There's the big, long stories like Bindings of Fate and As Darkness Falls and The Enemy Within. And that's been 3 years since I've written any of that. So that the story
you've been in like novella.
Yeah, very novella happy, and I think the novellas have been good because that short form writing has been, an important kind of step to learn what to cut and
it keeps you on your toes too because you're telling. I mean, it's all the same voice, but they are different stories with different flavors.
Yeah, and different protagonists. Yeah. Like the Child of the Stars trilogy is very male dominant. Mm-hmm. I try to make sure that like the female characters are all interesting and well written and more realistic than just damsel in distress and stuff like that. But I don't think it was until stories like Mageborn and Awake that those voices really came across, and you can tell that there's a different flavor. Because before that, it was all Chaos Cregan show. There was, and there it's an ensemble. It always is, but it's kind of like when you're reading a Batman comic, he's got his sidekicks and everything, but they're sidekicks. Yeah. So Chaos was always the focus, and it's kind of nice to get away from that. And I think that even in the future, even though Chaos is going to feature a lot again, it's going to be an everybody kind of show.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because like I have the benefit to not writing for the last 15 years writing stories is that I have a lot of stories that I want to tell in the world of Tellest that evolve around Steel Tip and recently have gone beyond him and like to the point where like I look forward to just writing all the Steel Tip stuff up to the point where I kill him off so that I can focus on some of the other characters.
And you know what? Like that actually is like a part, like that's a journey in my mind that I've got to for Chaos at one point too, because at one point I think that was like, I was so exhausted with him because he is like the goody two shoes Boy Scout kind of character. And I wanted to change. So like the only thing that I could think of was kill him. But obviously, I've taken sideways steps and backward steps and everything like that.
And I just found in my Tellest folder an interesting story that we had talked about that was like kind of the precursor to Keeper of the Void and the comic that we're writing that kind of explains like the I don't know. Again, I don't know what we can spoil. The and I can edit this out.
Yeah, just say whatever, and then I'll tell you no.
But that kind of explains like the different universes, the shards of Tellest. That where you have the book world, and eventually we'll have the comic world, and eventually we'll have the video game world, where they're not all part of
the same canon,
the Tellest Legends canon.
Yeah.
Whereas. So originally we had, and I called it Project Collapse, but I have like a 3-page treatment on a graphic novel that
because we had talked about this.
Yes, and it involves a similar character that this story that we now are telling has, and I won't give it away because that I know is not public knowledge.
Yeah, not for a couple weeks anyway.
But it was an interesting story because it played off the fact, let's do, I guess it was all 3 novels as graphic novels.
Yeah, we were going to do, or it was going to be one of each, right?
It was going to be like
the same story told 3 ways.
No, it was going to be Bindings of Fate, As Darkness Falls,
and
Enemy Within. As graphic novels, maybe with a little twist here and there, but nothing too noticeable, so that they seemed like just graphic novel versions of the novels.
And then something like strange was going to happen.
And then in Project Collapse, which would have been another graphic novel, that was like a way off sequel to just the world of Tellest, where like we see our heroes of Draconis in like their elder years. And it's an interesting read that I do want to.
Yeah, I wouldn't discard that.
Like that's something that like even if I take bits of it and put it in like the canon, so like there's things in there that I really like people impersonating other people that I'm like, that's a good story element that I'm going to use for the novel. That was an interesting disappearance of Static.
The buzz went away. It's back. I love you, Static.
I wonder if if there's no static on the recording and people are like, huh?
Yeah.
Which reminds me, at the end we have to leave a nice 10-second of silence.
Why do we do that?
So that I can edit the noise out.
Oh, okay. Real quick, since we're on Tellest, we're heavy on Tellest, I do want to spoil a little bit from Heart of the Forest. Just a tiny little bit.
Stars Steel Tip. Who is me?
and regarding Steel Tip, there is
he dies.
Yeah, there is a May next September romance in the air. Edit out. So you haven't heard of the term May September romance? That's when like a younger person.
I shook my head no. By the way,
that's all right. That's all right. I think they assume that you didn't know because you didn't answer. A May September romance is when a younger person ends up getting with an older person. And this person, let's just say, for Steel Tip, is much, much older.
Interesting, but legal because he's 18.
So yeah, there's definitely some evolutions to the story that I didn't expect to see. It was very bare bones in the original like treatment that I did for the game because with the game, yeah, I mean with the game, you have to kind of stay like between the lines with a story like this where it was a bigger kind of form. I knew that I could, paint outside the lines and do my. So the big difference between the game and the books was in the game, the suspicion was that the character was always going to be alone. That like he was going to face the odds because that's what you do. In Contra, you fought 5,000 bad guys with 3 lives, and when every one shot killed you. For Heart of the Forest, the game, it was going to be Steel Tip against a countless horde of enemies, a little bit of story interspersed in between, but that doesn't make for good novels.
No.
So I made sure that he had interesting companions along on the ride, and sometimes that doesn't end well. So sometimes it ends with magical herpes.
Or death.
Yes.
I guess one leads to the other, but
sometimes.
I don't know how death leads to herpes, though. Especially magical.
Well, herpes. It depends on who's doing who. Getting herpes when.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're spitting out there.
Yeah, there's a little tweaks. There's little tweaks here and there between the video game story and the real story. For the sake of being discreet, I'm not going to tell like what kind of stuff happens, but
I'll read it and I'll tweet it.
I'll read it. But actually, we can talk real quick. I mean, you said I was crushing it. Like I said, in a year and a half, I didn't even crank out 50,000 words, and I'm 12 days in. Is today the 12th?
Today is the 12th.
So in 12 days in, I've written 26,000 words.
Yeah, and I know it was on the 10th, maybe it was yesterday, the 11th, that you tweeted out or put it on Facebook that you were at 25, that you were at the halfway point.
Yep.
Less than, I think it was 10 days in. I think it was on the 10th. So you were 10 days in and you were halfway point, which I think is utterly amazing because like, I'm someone that just took 3 months. I looked at my notes. We started talking about this comic book at the end of July, so I took like 2.5 months to write 22 pages of a comic book. You
know what it is too? It's if I hadn't finished something, I would be petrified to finish something. Mm-hmm. Part of the writer's journey, I think, is the first time. And I mean, you have finished one, but it's been so long that. It's almost like starting. You're a virgin again. Yeah, you're a virgin as far as
I'm an author virgin.
Yes,
writer virgin.
You're whatever. Well, no, we'll say a writer virgin because as an author, you're a storyteller and you're always storytelling. Once you kind of get in that groove where you can see that you can finish a story, it gets easier every time. You can see other people on NaNoWriMo and you can see like how long they've done it, and you can kind of see. Everyone who has started NaNoWriMo and kind of failed like 1 or 2 times, you can see as soon as they succeed, there's no failing after that. Like that first time that they hit 50,000 words, just something clicked in their head and they were able to do it. Like I said, I'm not sure that that this is going to be the way that I go forward with all my stuff forever, but I definitely am going to add it to like my tool set because I want to make sure that people can get on board and get like a new story, a new part of the story every week.
And like, so that's like, I'm of the mindset of like, I like to write. Like I like to use a pen or paper or a pencil and write the story. And then, but like I think it's for me, it's the essence of time where it's like, I think it just makes more sense to just type it on the computer.
Yeah.
And because like, that's what I did with the comic. The comic was purely written in Final Draft. And because I approached the comic as a script versus like an actual book or something. So for that, like for scripts, my mind goes to computer instantly. But yeah, I think I now that that's finished, like I'm so on board for like, because like there's a character in the comic book that like is in my world that I want to like, that gets introduced in this short story at one point, and he's sprinkled in throughout all my stories. And like that, interestingly enough, is more interesting to me than Steel Tip is at this point. Because for me, Steel Tip has been around, and the story that needs to be written has been around for 15 years.
Yeah.
So like it's like a story that's just kind of stagnant in my mind.
I think that was why like Bindings of Fate and As Darkness Falls and The Enemy Within took so long for me to kind of get out to people, because it was a story I'd already told. The original 3 stories, besides Crossroads, the other 2, they didn't get out in front of people, but I had written those stories before, so it was just kind of learning how to retell them with the new voice that I had.
And that I'm excited to do that. And then like, because you're doing your Tales of Tellest, which hopefully for volume 2, I guess at this point, the Christmas stories that I've written are going to get in there, because I have, again, that's another thing that I put off to the side.
I mean, I would imagine you got like 2 years to get those stories prepared.
Oh yeah, well, I mean the one's going to be finished for this Christmas for real, and then last year I said I was going to get Christmas and then Christmas in July for Tellest. And then knock out that little mini trilogy. So that's this year's goal, is that, story 2 will be posted at Christmas time, and then story 3 will be posted at Christmas in July for Tellest.
They'll end up being bundled in the next Tales of Tellest.
And then I have, for the Ippius side of things, I have like the Tales of Ippius. I forget the official name. I think it's the Heroes of Ippius, Villains of Ippius, and Heroes and Villains of Ippius. Like there's so many short story ideas that I have that I'm more interested in, but I think just as I don't want to say personal goal. I don't know the word, but I need to get Steel Tip's story out there first, because he is such an important character in the world of Tellest. Like he's
the central peg, and like all the other kind of strings kind of go off from him.
Yeah, like for me, I've always looked at Chaos as the driving force of Tellest, and then Steel Tip being like the second in command, if you will, or like he's the same.
I would say like the big 3 are him, Chaos, Steel Tip, and Christopher.
Yeah. And so for me, I need to get him out there. I think what I want to do now at this point, because I've been just staring at this folder, and I just want to, because we've been talking about writing from back in the day, and this isn't King's Blood. This isn't the original King's Blood. What it is, do you remember, like, I guess this was before MySpace, like Live Journal and Dead Journal?
I remember Dead Journal.
Oh my God. So Jen, I remember why I saved these.
All right, kids, we're going to cut it short right there and continue our conversation with Mike DeAngelo next week. But for now, make sure you go to Tellest.com, check out everything he has to offer right there. Everything from his books to blog posts to art to, promoting other works of art, other fiction books that fit into the world of Tellest. And make sure you follow him on Twitter at Tellest on Twitter.com. Follow this show on Twitter at That Entertains. And please make sure you go to iTunes or wherever you subscribe for us, but go to iTunes, please, and leave us a 5-star review, and all that helps on iTunes when you subscribe and when you leave a review to help more people see our show and for us to get more listeners. And it's just kind of more people that listen, the more people that leave reviews. It's a nice little cycle that ensures a future for Everything Is Awesome, where we can do live shows and get bigger and badder guests on this show. Not that our guests so far haven't been big and bad, but we want to get as many guests on this show as possible. So make sure you do that. Follow me on Twitter at HHWST. And until next time, you're listening to Everything Is Awesome right here on awesomepodcast.com.